So let's introduce two more assumptions about consumer behavior. One of them we implicitly alluded to in the previous lessons, in the previous slides. That one is that the consumer always like to have more than less. So more is better assumption. The implication this assumption has on the indifference curve is pretty obvious. The first one is that the indifference curve will be downward sloping. In other words, that if you give this consumer, let's say the consumer is going to move from A to B, if you give the consumer another X, then unless you take away some Y, this consumer is actually going to be happier. For instance, if you give this consumer another X and keep him with the same Y, let's say 6 and 5, then this consumer actually has more of at least one of the goods while keeping the other goods the same. So this consumer generally have more, has 11. So this consumer must be better than before. So what the more is better assumption, one of the implications is that the indifference curve are always going to be negative with slope. If you give the consumer one of the goods, then you, in order to remain indifferent, you have to take away some of the other goods. If not, the consumer will be better off. The other implication is that an indifference curve to the right of the origin or further away from the origin is going to be better. In the same way that we can say that this new curve, let's call it this new point, call it point E, is preferred to A because it has more of at least one, then it must be in a new indifference curve that has probably 11 along the line. So what more is better imply is that indifference curve 1 is always going to be better to indifference curve 0.